Hello, my name is Joan Doyle and I am an artist and a library assistant here at the Canton Library. Canton Library is a branch of the Haywood County Libraries, and we're bringing you today a class in charcoal drawing. Now, charcoal drawing is one of the oldest forms of art, as it was used in the cave paintings of early man. It's also been used by many of the master artists of our time, including Michelangelo and Rubens. These are examples of their work. They used charcoal to work up initial drawings for their paintings. Charcoal was also used for drawing out the drawings of murals that were going to be painted on walls. It was used down through the ages, and modern artists are doing exceptional things with charcoal. Very inspiring to me particularly, and I hope inspiring to you. And one of those is Joan Doyle, and he is a South African man, and he is creating the most amazing charcoal drawings, photographic detail. And here's one of his pieces. Another man in Italy, also a genius with charcoal, is Emanuele Dascanio, doing incredible work with simply charcoal. It's very inspirational to see, and here's another one of his pieces, and I hope it inspires you to see what you can do with charcoal. It's pretty astounding. Now, today's project that we're going to work on is simply an eye, and it is very easy to do, and I hope you will follow along with me. And one thing I would like to mention is that charcoal is very loose. It's grainy. It's malleable under your fingers and your hands. You can erase it. So when your piece is finished, you will need to seal it with a spray varnish, which you can get at most art stores. And now, some of the things you will need. What you will need to do a charcoal drawing. In here in the blue square, I have the essentials to do a charcoal drawing, which are a charcoal pencil, a charcoal stick, something to blend it, which it can be a Q-tip or it can be tissue, or your finger. It's always good. It gets very messy, but you can use your finger. And then an eraser. And this is a kneaded eraser. It's a special type of eraser that you can push and squeeze, and you can make a point out of to get into the little details, or you can make it a bigger area for erasing larger spaces. Also, you can use what the ancients did, and this is a little piece of charred wood, and I have used this just because I had it, and it worked great. It was perfect. So these are the essentials. These are some extra things once you get into it, or you feel like you'd like to do more, that you can use. This is an eraser, which is pointed and is good for small spaces. This is a paintbrush, which is great for blending. I have here B pencils. Your standard pencil that you probably use in school is probably a H. It's a 1H, a 2H. This is a number 2. It's a standard pencil. And it's very, it'll give you a very gray line. Whereas the B pencils, B stands for blackness, it'll give you a nice black line. So you can get the higher numbers. This is a 4B, and this is just a B. So the higher the number, the blacker the result will be when you use it. One great thing for blending, which I use a lot, is cotton wool. And that comes in pill boxes. If you get a vitamin box, it usually comes with that in the top when you open it. That's great for blending. I use it a lot. This is a stubby stick for blending also, a blending tool. This is an electric razor. This is pretty advanced, and it's really good for lifting, bringing back white in the paper. If you can't bring back white, there's also a white chalk stick, which a lot of people who use charcoal we'll also use, which will bring out some of the highlights. So those are some of the things you will need. As I said, these are the essentials if you want to just play and try it out for yourself and see if it's something you want to do more of. So let's begin. So to start, I have drawn my eye in the hard pencil, but very, very lightly, with a very light line. And I did use construction lines here to get that circle. The circle of the pupil of the eye will go beyond that line. I can just erase it. So it should, and I would like if you would examine your own eye in a mirror so you can get some of the details and how it looks. If you notice the lower line it's slightly curved. The upper line is much more curved. It's going around the eyeball. So when you've got your eye constructed, draw it very lightly, like I said, with the hard pencil. You can always, of course, use a B pencil, which is harder, but just remember to do it very lightly because we really don't want outlines. We're going to create some lovely shades of gray. And one thing I didn't talk about in the what you will need for this class was the paper. I like to use a slightly textured paper. Now I'm beginning by rubbing my charcoal stick with my cotton wool and putting in some gray. And I don't mind if I get gray where there should be white because I can lift it out with my kneaded eraser. But it gives me a little bit of background. This is part of the skin around the eye. I keep my reference close by. So this is what I'm kind of going to end up with. I keep that so I can reference it. And if you like, it's nice to keep a mirror so that you can examine your own eye to see the details and the eyelashes and all the aspects of the eye that you want to include in your drawing. So we've kind of got a bit of gray there to represent the skin around the eye. And I didn't care if I went into the white of the eye because I can bring it back. And even that, I mean, there will be shadows in there. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my charcoal pencil and maybe just outline a little bit of where the skin and the eyeball come together. And when you put in some of that, it's nice and textured on the paper. At this point, you can use your paintbrush to smooth it out and soften it out into the grayer area. You can also use that blending tool that I showed you. Or what we all pretty much have in our house is a Q-tip. That works really well too. I'm going to continue to, and look how dirty I am already. So expect to get mucky, messy, dirty. It's all okay. Part of the art process, I think. It's like you can't be too fussy. So I'm going to give this a nice dark outline. Maybe not so much on the bottom. And then I like to blend it in a little bit. I don't like hard edges, except for where I want hard edges. And on a fold of the skin, it'll be nice and soft. And of course you've got where the eyelid folds up, you're going to have another dark line here. So we can go ahead and add that in now. And soften it in with my Q-tip. Works great. And your finger, I think fingers work best actually. I really like to use my fingers. And now let's start in, oops, that's my charcoal pencil. Start in on the pupil. We can kind of just start darkening that in, but what we will need to remember is to leave an area white, because if you examine your eye in the mirror, you'll see that whatever the light source is in the room you're in will be reflected in your eye. Very interesting to see. Sometimes it's circular, sometimes it's square, depending on what it is. In this room we have overhead lights that are rectangular. You know, sometimes it'll be a window. You'll actually see a window reflected in your eye. Try and keep that nice and rounded. I think I went a little far out there. I need an eraser. And you see how it's lifted. It's already shown you where you can lift the charcoal away and create more white. Get that nice and circular eye. It doesn't have to be too dark right around the edges, but I will blend that now. So you can see it's getting darker, but I want it to be even darker around this bottom edge. And also you'll get those, they're almost like feathers in your eye. This is the muscles, I guess, in your eye that will make this area larger or smaller depending on how much light there is in the room you're in. And it's really lovely. What you can get with charcoal is a lot of contrast, the black and white, and it's really, I find it really attractive actually. The extremes. And painters often do a sketch in charcoal so that they can see for their painting where the darkest places will be and the lightest places will be. It's a wonderful indicator as to where you want your darkest darks, because it makes the painting exciting, just like it makes this drawing exciting to have some nice extremes of dark and light. Where you want the light to be, and I'm going to make this like a window that's being reflected in the eye. So a window kind of like that. And sometimes you'll see the eyelashes reflected in your eye, and maybe we'll add that later once we finalize it. But right now I'm just going to work in here. And of course this is going to be the blackest area, because it's the hole. You can dark into your interior of the eye. Lots of charcoal in there. Smooth it. See how quickly that makes it lovely and smooth and even. A nice dark center. I can even use what's on my finger to come up here and add some shadow on the above that fold in the eye. So it's beginning to shape up. So let's put a little bit more dark in here, in the corner of the eye. A little more dark maybe in here, because the shadow of the lid coming onto the eye might cause a little bit more shadow under this lid. I'll blend that a little bit. It comes around there. The tear duct. So it's really beginning to shape up. It's nice and dark. So we have a good eye shape. And this can be a little gray, top part of the eye, so it's going to give us contrast with the bottom of the eye. Okay, so at this point I can go to my eraser. Now I use this type of eraser to bring back some white. So that gives us a little bit of a highlight in there, in that tear duct of the eye. I can use my kneaded eraser also and make this a little whiter, because it is the white of the eye. And maybe a little bit whiter down here. See how nice contrast that's making with what I've done. Smooth that out a little bit. Okay, so we have, thinking of adding like a teardrop right around here, as if there's water coming out of the eye. And that's, the eye glistens because it's got water. It's always covered in a layer of water, salty water, as you know when you cry. So on this teardrop, we'll add a shadow area. And also with the kneaded eraser, and this is part of what I love. It's kind of like sculpting to me, where I lift out an area of the charcoal and create a nice bright area. So kind of like, and then I'll just show you how I use my kneaded eraser. If I want to highlight on that little teardrop, there's nice, that's nice and white, and maybe a little bit around the bottom because it's water. And in here in the eye, I like to put a little bit of a highlight along this edge, because you can see where the water may be pooling in the bottom of the eye. You can also use this for that purpose. Bring up that idea of water pooling in the bottom of the eye. And also, of course, for highlight, we'd like to get a nice strong highlight here in the light source of the eye. Okay, getting somewhere. We're getting, okay, so at this point I think I'm maybe ready. And maybe I'll go a little darker in here, because the eyelashes are going to go on and they do create a shadow. So I'll add a little bit more dark in here. And maybe a little bit above here, where that skin is folding above the eye, creating a shadow. And then, of course, blending that with my Q-tip. Q-tips are okay, but I said fingers are better. And I'm going to use my charcoal stick a little bit here, because it makes it really nice and soft when you use the cotton wool for gray areas. It really works well. Now I talked about the white stick, and that can be used to bring back white. If you're, especially great if you're working on not white paper. If it's a brown paper, it's brilliant for bringing in the whites where you need them. So let's see, I think I want to put a few lighter areas in the bottom part of the eye. So I'm going to point my kneaded eraser. It gets black, so you have to keep changing up the spot you're using, because it won't lift anymore. See, it's covered in black. So if I just mush that in That's a very technical art term. Mush. Mush that in there and bring up another point. Okay. Okay, you get a feel of the light highlights, and then you can even go back and maybe, you also got to watch where you put your fingers, and that's why tissue is very useful. If you're working over a part you've already drawn, you want to get tissue under your hand so you don't smudge everything. And also, when you finalize the drawing and you're happy with it and you consider it done, and I would say leave it overnight before you decide it's really done. It's good to come back fresh the next day and look at what you've done and see if you're really happy with it. And if you are at that point, you can seal it. And that's the other thing, the charcoal, because it's just grains of charcoal. It can be brushed off, as we've seen with the eraser. And it can come off on your fingers if it's touched, so it has to be sealed. So I'm just going to lighten up that because the light would hit that right there, that lid. So with my kneaded eraser and maybe with a smushed up new piece, I'll bring out some of the highlight on that. How nice is that? Okay. I feel like I want a little bit more dark in here, just because the eyelashes are going to cause that shadow. Okay, so now I'm going to create a little, if you look at your eye, and I know you do when you do your makeup and you see that little lower lid has an edge that stays kind of moist in there. And then the eyelashes come out from round about there. So we start to add the eyelashes right about here. Long and short. And through the tears. And then the upper ones, look, I'm getting the paper messy, but that's okay, you can rub that off. Again, if I'm working on this area, put down my tissue so I don't smudge where I don't want to smudge. Short and long, but mostly long on top, longer than on the bottom. Okay. All right, so I can clean it up. Take my little fingerprints off of there. And that's the general idea. I don't know that there's anything more I would add at this point. If you're happy with it, maybe a little bit more shadow in here. Maybe a little bit more shadow in there, just to get that feeling of the curvature of the eyeball. Maybe a few more eyelashes in there. They're never always going exactly in the same direction or the same length. diffuse, that kind of reflect and that highlight. And I think we're done. That's when you sign it.